Yeah.
Yeah.
How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here, and I have a very special guest in studio today, Robert "Sput" Searight. How you
Glad to
doing,
be
man?
here.
So welcome here. So
Yeah.
great having you here. Now, you were at Sweetwater last week, but before last week, had you been to Sweetwater before?
No, I haven't. Well, years ago, but
Okay.
no. This is not this place. Yeah,
Okay.
this is a whole nother building and atmosphere, I guess. Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, it's great to have you here. And you were here with Paul Gilbert for the last couple of days
Yeah.
with Ibanez, and you guys were jamming last night, and it was great to hear you play. He's a great player, and it was cool to see you play in a
Yeah.
different setting like that.
Yeah.
You've had a killer career so far. I'm a big fan of your playing, and
Thank you.
let's kind of start from the beginning, if you don't mind, just for a minute. I know you've told this story probably many times before, but
Yeah.
you started at a young age. You came up from a musical family.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in that household with all the music around?
Yeah, from Dallas, Texas. Mom and dad musicians.
Yeah.
They both were music majors in education in college.
Okay.
My dad was an opera singer. My mom was an opera singer and a musician as well.
Okay.
And so yeah, we grew up, of course, the black church. And my mom and dad were directors. So I grew up around a bunch of singers and musicians. So grew up very religious though, and we were very restricted on the kind of music we could hear, we could listen to. So from the age of, I'd say, all the way up until 8 years old, I didn't have a lot of outside of Christian music to listen to. And my auntie was married to a DJ, and they split up. And in her revengeful rage against them, she stole all his crates of albums,
Okay.
and she stored them at our house.
So you got to pick and start hearing some
So
different stuff?
all of a sudden, I had like thousands of vinyls, like at my disposal.
Sure.
And I just, every day coming home from school, most of the kids were like changing their clothes, doing their homework, going out and play football or play with the kids on the street. I was coming in and listening to these vinyls and trying to get as many of them and reading the credits and stuff like that. And I got introduced to all these drummers that I now know to be my heroes, like Steve Gadd, David Garibaldi. I was listening to Tower Power Records and Mike Clark, Peter Erskine, Billy Cobham, all these guys, Max Roach, and it was a plethora of genres. So I started learning music at that point. And
Now, were your parents cool with you expanding your horizons at that point, or did you have to kind of keep it a secret?
no, my parents were cool. It was the church.
Oh, I got you.
My parents were musicians, and they kind of got it. But it's just it was a forbidden thing in the specific church we were in.
Okay.
And when I turned 10, we left the church. So it kind of opened up a lot of things in my life when we left that church. So it was really cool though, because I mean I learned a lot from those musicians at that place, and it just now I have all of this information, and so I went to school, did Booker T. Washington for the Performing Arts in Dallas, where Nora Jones, where Hargrove, and a lot of other people have graduated from.
That must have been cool. Sorry to interrupt. That must have been cool because at that high school age, you were music was the focus at that school, right? I mean, that's what those magnet schools are all about, is to have
it was a focus in the four arts clusters, which was music, visual arts, dance, and theater.
Okay.
So that was very important to me because now I got into expression and creativity and improvisation.
Sure.
And a lot of the times I would go and see the improv shows in the theater. It inspired me to go musically be that way. So I mean, a lot of things were influential in that school, but I did learn how to play piano there, which really helped me.
Sure.
And I studied music on a high level at a very young age, doing that. And it just catapulted me into doing some of the things that I ended up doing for the rest of my life, up until now, actually. So, I mean, we started a community choir there. And we couldn't really do a lot because we were kids.
Right.
And I couldn't get the trust of the parents. So I asked my mom to come in and help out. And later on down the line, we formed this group called God's Property, which was a group that teamed with this gospel recording artist named Kirk Franklin.
Right.
And we did a song called Stump with Salt from Salt and Pepper.
And
that was
where
my
pretty successful part, yeah.
Yeah, that's a matter of fact, I got a Grammy from that. That started my career personally, and after that, I moved to LA and ended up working with Snoop Dogg, and that just spiraled into a lot of relationships with other artists and stuff like that. So, I mean, to fast forward, I've ended up working with people like Celine Dion, Bob Carlisle, Erykah Badu, Justin Timberlake, Timbaland, P. Diddy, Kendrick Lamar. It goes on and on. Like it's a whole lot. Of course, the whole West Coast connection with the hip hop and stuff. So yeah,
that's an awesome story, man. So let me take one step back. What was it that drew you to drums specifically? What called you to this instrument?
Man, I'm not really sure, but I know I hear stories that I would just beat on things all the time when I was little. Like as far as I can remember, my grandma and my mom, my aunties, they all tell stories about how when I used to go visit them as a toddler, I go straight to the kitchen cabinets and pick out all the pots and pans and set them up and take their spoons and just hit on stuff. So I just think it's something that was just in me even before I knew what it really was.
Sure.
But I got my first drum kit and I immediately knew what to do with it, So it's just one of those things. I think the drums just was something that was in me, music period, but I think drums really caught my ear because I really feel like even at that age I was trying to be challenged, and drums were the most challenging thing to me.
Very cool. Now, I've been following your career a bit. You went to North Texas State for a bit as well, right?
Yeah.
Now, how does that fall in the timeline with the winning the Grammy for Stomp and going out to the West Coast and doing all that kind of stuff? Was that before that?
So what happened was I was in school for my first year. I went to junior college right out of high school. First year out of high school, and the choir was formed that year.
Okay.
It was legitimately a thing at that point, and so we were getting pretty popular, and then so I kind of felt like something could happen, but you never knew it could have done that, So, and then after junior college, I did a year and a half in junior college, and I went to the University of North Texas because I really wanted to really get deep into. I wanted to prepare myself before there because I went to the auditions there, and it was like 150 drummers there, and it was very overwhelming. I felt like I needed to get my homework, to get my studies up before I could function in there.
Well, one of the great drum teachers.
Yeah,
Ed Soph works there. Yeah, so that's
Ed Soph and Mike Drake were the two guys there, and I took one lesson that changed my life there, and I wasn't ready, and I knew it. And so I went to junior college to kind of like prepare myself, and I went back a year and a half later, and then this record came out that we did, and it blew up, and so we had to hit the road. So I asked my professors if I could, take a couple, weeks off, and then the tour kept getting extended. So I was calling back and like, well, yeah, can we add another week to it? And it kept, we add another week to it, and before you knew it, it was like six weeks. And I came back on a break, and we had to do 2 more weeks, and so I had to leave school. So that's kind of like my tenure at the school,
Yeah.
And I never, I never intended that to be the story, but
but career.
Yeah, the career. So I went to school to do that,
right?
And my career started happening, and then it just kept happening. So yeah.
Well, congratulations on that, man.
Yeah,
that's a good story.
Yeah. So I actually didn't get but a semester of school there. But I met a lot of cool people, and it did change the way I think, and it gave me some ideas that I still stick to and live by now. So.
That's awesome. Really good stuff. So now where in the timeline did Snarky Puppy come into all of this stuff? Because obviously a lot of people know you from that band.
Yeah.
Sure, you've done a lot of great gigs, but that band has such a cool thing because of the instrumentation, the size of the band. It's instrumental music. It's got fusion and funk and all kinds of stuff in it, and the band has really had some great success playing that style of music in the world of pop and all the other things that are its competition. So how did Snarky Puppy come to you as a player?
Well, I started playing. I went back home. I lived in LA for a while, and I went back home. Unfortunately, my pops passed,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and in the middle of a tour with Snoop Dogg, and it was hard on my family. So I decided to move back to Dallas,
Okay.
where I was from, my home, to help out, with some of the emotional things that we were going through as a family. And so I ended up playing. I started playing with Erica Badu, and was traveling the world with her. And 'cause everybody was Dallas based, so it was kind of easier to do that.
Okay.
And so we were doing. I did that for a few years, like quite a bit. And but what we would do off tour, when we come home from tours and we not have like gigs or anything, we started these jam sessions that we would do just for the sake of just playing together, and it just grew and grew on Wednesday nights. We just we kept going from building to building because it kept outgrowing these places. And what would happen is 40 minutes away from Dallas, 40 to 45 minutes is North Texas, which is Denton, Texas, which is very close. Right. And these kids from Denton would come down on Wednesday nights and sit in and participate in these jam sessions. And a lot of the Snarky guys would come, and we just mixed and mingled with these guys. And you can recognize right away that they were some talented young kids. And the bass player, Mike Lee, came over, and he played bass, and I was like, whoa. I was like, wait a minute now. It was too much. Sure. I was like, we were all blown away by his gift. And so he gave me a card and his number and was like, hey man, I have a band. I would like for you to check it out. And I went to go check his band out on a date with my wife. Now she's my wife, but she was my girlfriend at the time. Right. And it was horrible because it was a date, and I took her on a date to go see a band. But she's a musician too. So it was cool. And we get there, and we both were like, wow, this is not what we expected. It wasn't like just a band. They were playing like some intense and some very progressive and evolving music. Sure. And so he told me, I gave him my number and told him, anything you need, man, you can call me anytime. And fast forward, he called me to do a gig on keys. That's right. Because I'm a keyboard player as well. So that turned into me being a band member for a year, playing keys. And I had a studio in Dallas, and we recorded a record called Bring Us the Bright at my studio in Dallas. The entire record, and me and Mike spent a lot of time producing that record together, and it just became a really good unit and a partnership. And when the drummer that was there at the time had some difficulties, personal issues or something, I think in marriage. I really don't understand what happened, but the opportunity came because he left and moved out of the country. Okay. And the opportunity came for me to play drums, and the rest is history. That was probably 12 years ago. And ever since, man, it's been quite a journey. Yeah.
That's a great story. The YouTube videos I've seen you guys doing those in the rehearsal studio live sessions with all the audience there. Everybody has headphones and stuff. How much rehearsal went into doing those things in front of those people? Because it sounds and it looks so tight watching it on video. It's like you guys are just burning and so tight as a unit. How long did you have to play together to get it to that point?
Well, the thing is, we were always touring. Okay. We were always on the road. We were always playing together. We had a lot of experience playing together. And I was gonna say that the Dallas community is what kind of molded that, the shape of the music that was happening with that band, because some of the guys were playing in the churches, right. Some of the guys were doing sessions, some of the guys were doing R&B gigs, hip hop gigs, and all of that. The scene in Dallas is really thick with versatility and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of talent. So that stuff was getting soaked up and really molded there. So I think that was a huge influence of why the music was the way it was. And then we kept going on the road. We just take trips, sure. all the time. So the thing is, once we got to a place where we was we wanted to record, we found out that it was it was better for us to perform live, but we wanted the quality of studio perform.
Sure. Sound, right? Yeah.
The sonically, we wanted it to sound good, as like studio quality. And so we were like, well, let's just bring both of those worlds together. And we didn't have many fans then. So the idea was just to put the word out to our few fans and get them to come hang out with us for like 3 days. And then we record, some music while they're there. And so like the rehearsal time wasn't really, like we would learn songs and then tour them.
You're right.
And then they would take shape on tour and they would become the songs that we end up recording. But the rehearsal time might have been 2 days, like a year before we recorded
Oh,
it.
okay. So
But the process of the song is morphed just from touring and the crowd reaction or whatever, and that's the beauty of the music that we play, because the crowd is very much a part of the process of how it grows and how it's, presented.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very cool. Watching you play, you're very ambidextrous. You can lead with either hand.
Yeah.
And
it appears to be that way. I can give you the secret, though.
Yeah. So show. Well, do you want to share the secret?
Well, the secret is not a secret at all. I'm lefty.
Oh, okay.
I'm a left-handed guy, and I'm stronger playing open-handed.
Okay.
And this is, but the thing is, I've been playing a right-hand kit pretty much, over 2 decades. So I've learned how to embrace my weaknesses.
Okay.
If you will.
Sure.
And that's going to the right. And not being afraid to practice that way.
Sure.
And so I've developed this really cool way to play certain types of grooves, leading with the right hand. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And
it opens up the drum kit so much when you're able to go back and forth like that.
Yeah, and I mean that was the whole point of putting the snare to the right too, because most people put the second auxiliary snare to the left.
Sort of like I have over here, yeah.
Yeah, but putting it to the right gives me a chance to, still play open-handed and still pull off the things that I want to pull off and turn the snares off, and it just becomes a tom.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So those are the things that really, really kind of challenge me to be more creative and to kind of utilize, because I've always thought it looked ugly to play to the left, but now I'm embracing all of those things and playing to the right whenever I'm strong.
That's very
enough
cool.
to do that, and then vice versa. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about the drums, and you mentioned the tom/snare.
Yeah.
Tom has come up with a really cool drum kit in this hyperdrive duo, and you had a lot to do with it. Didn't you work with Tom coming up with some of these innovations?
I had a not the hyperdrive, but I played Thomas Starr Walnut.
Okay.
And I designed a kit for my own purposes I designed the dimensions of the drums, these same dimensions, and I wanted to have the snare. I wanted to have a snare that was bigger than 8x14.
Okay.
But I didn't want it so big. I still wanted it to be like usable if I wanted to play it as a main snare. So I decided to go with a 9x14 snare. I mean, or tom, if you will, snum, whatever you want to call it. But so the idea was that I put it over here, and it, like I said, it becomes a tom when you turn it off. So I wanted it to be hella deep, like where I can tune it deep and it not sound like a thud. I want it to sound really tasteful and something unique, because people would tune deep, but they wouldn't tune that deep.
Right.
People, oddly, it would sound weird to tune that deep, a regular size snare, you know. So, and they took from that, and the thing is, the Starr Walnut is a very expensive kit, you know. So a lot of people, although they want that idea, they can't go and may not be able to afford it. So when they came out with this was amazing, because, and what's the difference between this and what I designed was that they added floor tom legs to it. So, because I use mine with a snare stand, and this is the cool thing about this, the hyperdrive kits, is because is that first of all, you still get the tone of a regular. You get the tone of a regular 3-piece drum kit. If you want to play rock, you can play rock, and you get. But I like the way they did the kick drums because they're slightly. They especially the 20 inches. You know, the 22 inches definitely sing just because they're big, but the 22 inches have this hollow sound to it, you know, and it fills the room every time you play it. Every last one of these drums do that, and of course with the snare, floor tom in the middle of these two. I mean, it fits well. No matter if you tune it up, it still fits well. And you know, for me personally, I use different heads because of the type of gigs I do. But I've tried these with the same, all heads on the same drums, and they still feel and sound good. You know,
Sure.
And those are the things that I appreciate about it, because you do want to have versatility. I mean, one thing can change the sound of the drum.
Sure.
Not just the pitch, the heads can change. Two different heads on two different drums can change the sound of the drums, but to have the consistency, no matter what, the consistency and quality, no matter what you put on the drums, it really makes a difference. So that's the most gratifying thing about this kit. I really appreciate it.
So let's talk about the head choice you have. A lot of drummers wouldn't maybe not think of putting different heads on each drum, but you're going for different textures and tones throughout the drum kit. So you have some Evans hydraulic heads on your floor toms there, and the duo snare as well.
Yeah.
That's just to get a thuddy, deep, low, thuddy sound?
Yeah. Well, when I got past the point of the drums looking, you want everything to look all uniformed and looking. When I got past that, I started getting into the sound of each drum. And because a lot of times I wasn't thinking about it that way. I wasn't thinking about the sound of each drum.
Sure.
Like a 12-inch has its own sound within itself. And so I was looking at the 12-inch and I was like, I need that to be a warm sound, but I want it to still sound like a tom. So I don't want it to sound like, I don't want it to sound too small. So I decided to use the Evans G2 coated for that on the 12. And for the deep snare thing that goes into the tom, I normally use a regular hydraulic, but this will work too. This is a hydraulic frosted, a 14, and the idea is that you have a thicker sound.
Okay.
Like you have to have a thicker. I think there may be like 3 plies or something like that. And I think the more the ply, the deeper the tone is. And not just because even if you use a 1-ply head on here, you can tune it low, but because the head is so thin, you're not gonna get that real tone out of the drum head, because you're kind of like forcing the tone out of there. So I felt like I feel like the thicker the head, the better the tone, the deep tone you get out of it. And so that's the reason why I use those heads. And plus having the hydraulics they have oil in them, so they have it's a little cheat in there.
Sure.
But they have a different kind of sound, just because of that little science that goes into those heads. And when you hit it does. I find that when it doesn't resonate between all the toms, so that's why I use it, because usually you hit it and it resonates all the toms kind of differently. So it kind of offsets the rest of the toms in a unique way. And on the 16, I use a series of heads on the 16. This is a hydraulic with a ring from the EMAD ring on it.
Okay.
But normally I'm going on the 16. I'm going for like the 70s sound, like that Al Green, floor tom, Parliament, Tiki Fullwood, Jerome Bailey, Tyrone Lampkin sound, and it's a very thick, deep, but very muffled sound. It kind of sounds like a kick drum sometimes.
Sure.
So I'm going for that, and then the best head to use is any of the 3-ply heads or the EMAD, the EMAD floor tom, which is a cool tom head to use on your bigger drums. So.
Killer.
Yeah.
Well, you know, while we're sitting here, why don't you, I mean, I know we played together at the beginning, but why don't you show us what this drum kit sounds like with these different head combinations and go for something a little bit. Awesome, man. It sounds so cool. It's so fun to hear. Let's talk about these cymbals. You have your Meinl user and Meinl player. So we were talking about before we started this video, the tones that Meinl has coming out of their cymbal lines is really great these days. Lots of effects plus normal sounds all kind of coupled together. Is this your sort of normal setup you have here, or is it does it change?
It kind of varies. It changes all the time.
Right.
I have my go-tos, and this is some of them. Yeah, this is the dual hats, and then there's some of my favorites, and it's like the extra dry. I have splashes. I have them stacked on top of each other to get that sound. And this is one of my favorite cymbals. Benny Grep put out a series of sand cymbals. Benny Grep, and this is like the 22-inch dual crash ride. I mean, 22-inch crash ride, sand crash ride, and I use it as a ride because it's like, it is a ride, but it's also a crash, and I love that. This is the vintage pure 20-inch, and it has pretty cool sound. I like the bell of it. And this is the extra thin, Byzance extra thin 20-inch. And this is the traditional, I mean, this is the vintage crash.
Right.
Yeah, Byzance vintage crash. So, I mean, I, as you can see, I like to use different. I just like the idea that you can have different textures and different sounds, even with the cymbals, you know. And I do the same thing with the drums too, because it inspires me to play differently.
Sure.
Because when you hear the different sounds, it inspires you to play in creative ways that might not be what you normally play, you know. So I mean, that's kind of the method, you know, but it varies from gig to gig, you know. I mean, Meinl is doing such a great thing with all of these new sounds that they're coming out with, these new series, and I just really, man, it's really cool to be a part of a company that's consistently trying to evolve.
Sure.
So yeah.
Very cool. In Dallas, there's the scene you grew up in, the church scene, that gospel drumming thing. To me, and I've been sort of following it for a long time, it seems like it's not, maybe not peaking, but it's really popular now, especially with drumming instructional sites and all kinds of stuff. The gospel sort of playing thing is a big deal, and a lot of guys are trying to learn how to play that. What's the state of gospel drumming? Is there a state, or is it its own thing, gospel drumming, or are you kind of taking it from bits and bobs from all the different styles of music and just adapting it to church?
I think in most cases, you know, a lot of musicians come from the church, like grew up in church, but the style of gospel is actually more traditional than modern. You know, like the things that they call, you know, gospel style drumming now is because of gospel chops. Right. And I think the misconception is that was the gospel style of drumming. Okay. It was just that a bunch of gospel musicians were playing in that way. Okay. But the gospel chops was actually influenced by non-gospel drummers. And I can tell you some. It was basically, if I had if we had an ancestor moment about where gospel chops came from, it would be people like, the three that come to mind first to me would be Vinnie Colaiuta,
Okay.
Dave Welkel, and Dennis Chambers.
Okay.
Dennis Chambers, because of his facility, was playing very fast, and he played polyrhythms a whole lot, and he played with a bunch of tones and he played with the cymbals high, and he could do all of these tricks. And he was doing this in the 80s.
Sure.
And Vinny he was playing over the bar line, like.
Oh, that's Zappa stuff he did way back when.
Yeah, he was
crazy.
playing over the bar line, and all of this stuff was happening. I mean, it took us a while to get it, but we were, like, that stuff was happening in the 80s. And I say, the reason why I say Dave Welkel is because, he had a relationship, a strong relationship with triplets. And he would play these triplets in ways that you didn't really hear the triplets played. And another thing he did was he changed the culture of gospel drumming because of the dimensions of the drums, the sizes. Before he came about, there wasn't an 8, there wasn't a 10-inch tom, there was an 8-inch tom, there wasn't a 10-inch tom. It was just basically 11 or 12, 15, or 11, 13, 16, or 12, 13, 16.
Right.
Like there was just a 3-piece kit, and he came and he added the 8 with the 10, and he had all of the Lord, the Lord, 3 up, 3 down.
Right.
All that stuff came about in the church after we saw him playing, and the splashes wasn't a thing. The splashes and the China crashes wasn't a thing till he came around. So now he didn't only just change the way, he changed the culture, because the dimensions had changed. Now we're recording drums, and you're hearing these higher tone toms, do 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 do, and there are more drums now.
Sure.
So, and I would say, like, maybe in the 2000s, like maybe early 2000, we started catching on to it, and we started playing with more facility, because before that it was more about being in the pocket.
Right.
But I think we didn't figure out at that point how to be creative and yet still be in a pocket. And I think in the 2000s it started happening. There's a guy named Calvin Rogers, Gerald Haywood, Jeremy Haynes, but the godfather of all of this stuff is in the gospel music history of drummers was a guy named Joel Smith, and he's out of Oakland, California. And shout out to him, he's still around kicking it. And man, he changed most of all of our lives, in that genre. And the reason why it's able to be what it is now is because he was just pushing the envelope always with sound, not just the sound of the drums, but just playing with finesse and kind of broadening our horizons on how we could play ballads and stuff. Because a lot of the people that grew up in church didn't get to hear Gad, or didn't get to hear all of the great drummers like, Ferroni, and all, Harvey Mason and all these guys that were doing session work, So it kind of changed the culture. So I really think that is the evolution of where we are now with the gospel. I mean, it's just it's an infusion of a lot of cultures, because a lot of Latin is influencing it now, a lot of African, folkloric rhythms are influencing now, a lot of fusion, a lot of jazz, a lot of blues. I mean, like, well, in a sense, that's the same thing. But yeah, I just think it's just like anything else. It's just evolving, but it is probably the most infused style of drumming.
Okay. I
would say.
Very cool. Thank you for that information. That's awesome. Now, you were telling me now at this point in your career, you have a band.
Yeah, at this point, I've stepped away a little bit from the Pups.
Right.
As an active touring member, to pursue a lot of my own goals and
Sure.
And I've been able to do some really cool stuff. I played on a record with Kendrick Lamar called "The Pimp Butterfly."
Sure.
And then I'm actively working on a record with Herbie Hancock right now.
That's awesome.
And I work with a guy named Terrace Martin, who's one of my good brothers and best friends. And we do a lot of production work together. So I've been doing that, but in the midst of it, I started a band called Ghost Note with the percussion player for Snarky Puppy, one of the percussion players. His name is Nate Worth.
Okay.
And we started as a drum duo, because he's one of the most amazing percussion players I've played with. You know, one of the most unique for sure. And we've developed, playing in that band for like 13 years. We've developed, playing together for 13 years. We've developed a way to play as one, and it's kind of weird now, because it's like we can literally finish each other's sentences, and it's kind of a cool thing to do. And so we started a band, and we put out a record a couple years ago called Fortified, and now we're on our about to release our sophomore project.
Cool.
And it's called Swagism, and it comes out 4/20 April of 2018. And we're very excited. I'm very excited about that, because it's new music, and the first time we did the record, it was just me and him. But now we have a band. We have a bass player named Mono Neon and a couple of other supporting instrumentalists, and the band is, I mean, like it's literally like a funk fusion, world dance, hip hop. It's like it has all kinds of musical styles incorporated into these songs. So I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Very cool. This is all based in Dallas too?
No, everybody's from everywhere.
Okay.
You kind of collect people, you know, the more you travel.
Sure.
You kind of meet a bunch of cool musicians in different areas of the country. So, we kind of spread it outside of Dallas a little bit this time.
Very cool, man. Well, Robert, Sput, everybody calls you Sput. Yeah, you've been called.
Yeah.
You got that name when you were a kid, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Sput, thanks so much for coming to Sweetwater. It's been a blast having you here these last couple of weeks.
Oh, man, my pleasure.
Best of luck the rest of your career. Please come back and visit us anytime you want.
Anytime you guys have me.
And just good luck with everything, man.
Thank you.
Let's take it out with some more playing.
Okay. You kick it off this time.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, man.